Roger X. Yes, sir.
Do you recall that Cat Merritt was managed to vote in elections without any interference? Maybe the circuit clerk, Teller County was open-minded.
What did you say?
Cat Merritt was able to vote before there was a voter outside in Colorado.
Yes, sir, he sure was. He registered to vote around 1923.
Maybe the circuit clerk was not one of those rednecks. It was, just circuit clerk. Humphreys County had the circuit clerk who had a bad name among the civil rights movement. Humphreys, J.H. Hood.
Oh, okay. Well, the other thing, during the time when my grandfather voted, registered to vote, my great-grandfather was a registered voter, and my great-uncle was a registered voter, and in the state, about 5 to 7% of blacks were registered. But of course, in the Delta counties, as you recall, there were people who, no black who was registered in Sunflower County and other places like that. So you know my family in Francisco?
No, Sunflower County counts about 5,000 Pennsylvania convicts approximately. Sadly, too many young men out of prison.
Okay, and what's your name, sir?
Charles Thornberry.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Meredith probably knows my dad who's gone now.
Okay.
And Jim Silver and Russ Meredith.
Okay. Nice to talk to you. Yes, ma'am.
I wrote out my social.
Okay.
I want to know how the animosity of James involved with injuries only of your mother in terms of her sister.
Affect who?
Your mother.
Your mother.
My mother.
How does it affect your mother?
His integration.
Integrating oldness. How does that affect your mother in terms of her safety and employment opportunities?
Well, it wasn't a lot of sun shining on that question. It had his integration. Really, it had a negative effect on us in both communities, black and white. Some family members had a hard time getting a job or keeping one. To answer your question.
And her safety.
Okay. Safety. Well, while he was a student, the police rode past my grandparents' house, 3 cars deep in the daylight. They didn't have any hoods on, everybody knew who they were. And they shot up my grandmother's house and barely missed my aunt, who was the youngest child. She was a 12th grader at Teller County training school. So none of us were safe. It was a lot of hate towards the family for him going. A lot of whites, of course, hated him and us and our race because they didn't want us to be equal to them. They didn't want us at their school, as they said. And he talks to people who were cussing him and Kroger's all the time. But, attitude about it now. But, of course, then was a different time and a different beast. An ugly part of our history. Yes.
Did your uncle ever talk about any differences in the way students or the community responded to him when he was in Columbia versus being a student at Ole Miss with the same kind of dichotomy? Was there any difference or was it the same?
Well, at Ole Miss, my uncle was the most unpopular student on campus. And he was isolated from the black community and the white community. I I interviewed a lady who just passed, she was 99, and she told me, Mrs. Susie Marshall, that, they loved James Meriden, but he was always with the white folks. So they weren't accustomed to going around with somebody who was, being exploited all the time by white people. And, I met a lady, in January who was a little girl who used to sit on the first row of the church and share a church hymn with him, but she was black. So he did go to church, but he was even then, the Marshals went to church with him. But in New York, he lived right across, real close to the campus, and of course it was different. Tupac Shakur's mother, she told me she lived in the same neighborhood with him in New York. And a lot of well-known people lived in that community, so it was different except for poverty. The poverty level in Harlem was just as bad as it was in Mississippi. Well, maybe not as bad. They had running water in Mississippi. We didn't have running water. And I understand that some blacks were so poor in the Delta during that time that they had pot bellies from being malnourished. So Mississippi was worse off in terms of that.